the kesan-kesan dasar British di tanah Melayu. So there's a few aspects here dari segi pembandaran, masyarakat berbilang kaum, sistem pendidikan vernacular, pengangkutan, and kesihatan. So we'll see the examples of each one and how they form. So first, dari segi pembandaran, what happened is the British brought in an economy yang very pesat, right? So because of that, all the pusat kegiatan economy, all the locations where economy was focused on, mengalami pertambahan penduduk. A lot of people came in to work in those pusat, right? For example, in KL and all that. So because of that, there's a pusat for economy. Tempat pekerja dapat keperluan. So the bandar became a place for the pekerja to buy daily needs and live there basically. And because of that, soon the pekan, the semua kampung, became bandar and became pusat pentadbiran. And then this pusat perniagaan was dilengkapi dengan infrastructure, right? Because the British needed to put in transport and all that to those bandar-bandar for the economy. And because of that, they had a lot of infrastructure and high quality of life. One thing though, a lot of the bandar was filled by majority of Chinese people instead of Malays or Indians, because those people were focused in the kampung and the ladang, right? And then, as I said before, there's pengembangan sistem pengangkutan, and all of this only occurred in Pantai Barat because all of the lombong-lombong and all the pusat economy was in Pantai Barat, and that's where the British focused all of this development on. So that's why today we have an imbalance between Pantai Barat and Pantai Timur of Semenanjung Tanah Melayu. An example of some bandar is Kuala Lumpur, Taiping and Seremban, which has focused on biji timah. Miri, which is focused on petroleum. And Kuala Lumpur has kedudukan strategic and jalan raya and kereta api utama. So KL is one of the biggest cities because they have a very good kedudukan, also a lot of infrastructure, right? And these cities, Kelang, Melaka, Pulau Pinang, expanded because they were very good pelabuhan for import and export. And then Kuching was also focused on export for gambar dan lada hitam only. Right, so that's pembandaran. Now we'll see why we have masyarakat berbilang kaum today. This is, you all should know this by now, which is that the Malays worked in pertanian dan luar bandar, the Indians worked in getah and estates, and the Chinese worked for lombong and perdagangan, mostly in bandar. Right, so dulu it was very split apart, unfortunately, because the British actually planned to split them apart by their economy. Right, so nowadays the book we have to talk about like how we all have to perpaduan and all the kebat stuff lah. Next is sistem pendidikan vernacular. So what is vernacular? Vernacular means menggunakan bahasa ibunda masing-masing sebagai bahasa pengantar. So each vernacular school uses the race's bahasa ibunda as the main language, right? So the sistem pendidikan Inggeris wasn't dilaksanakan ke tinggi, right? So the British system, when they built schools here, wasn't actually all the way to university. They only focus on rendah. So now we'll see all the sekolah vernacular. First, sekolah vernacular Melayu. The first ones were built in negeri-negeri Selat, right? And the purpose was only until peringkat rendah, because the British punya mindset was hanya untuk menjadikan anak-anak petani lebih baik daripada bapa, right? So the only reason why people had education was so that their kids could become better farmers than they were, right? So they only focus on that economy, not going anywhere else. So here are the few schools. There was the first one, 1856, in Teluk Belanga, Singapore, in Seberang Perai, and then Kuala Kangsar and Batu Gajah. Then there was a girls' school opening in around Negeri-Negeri Selat in 1885. And then these two schools, MPSI and College Melayu Kuala Kangsar, these were the very few colleges or universities of things that would extend across, extend after sekolah rendah, right? So satu-satu institut yang menjadi lanjutan sekolah rendah, and Kuala Kangsar, this one, was specifically for the elite Malays, okay, those who were families of those who mentadbir and had higher up jobs, right? So that's Melayu. India, so the British sediakan pendidikan Tamil di bandar, and for luar bandar in the ladang-ladang, it's by the pihak pengusaha ladang, okay, so they made their own sekolah Tamil at the ladang. An example, the first one is Sekolah Tamil Vivekananda in Seremban, and they use the system pendidikan dari India. And then in China, for China, all the schools were dibayari oleh saudagar China by Chinese traders, right? And you have examples here. 1940 we have Sekolah Chonghua, and 1936 Sekolah Cina Yuk Chai, right? And in 1920, the British mengeluarkan enactment pendaftaran sekolah. They had a rule, okay, Okay, the reason why the rule is here is to menyekat pengaruh komunis, because back then there was a huge communist problem, so they wanted to menyekat that. So each school had to mendaftar with the British to make sure that their education wasn't communist based, right? They weren't spreading communist propaganda. And then the School of Vernacular, now we look at pendidikan Inggeris, the English schools. And the reason why we had English schools in Tanah Melayu is because of the Mubalik Christians, okay? So the Christian preachers and also volunteer groups wanted to have English schools in Tanah Melayu. And mainly they were for the elites, the orang bandar, orang atasan, and focus on curriculum England, right? And besides that, the British also mengusahakan University Malaya, which is in Singapore, right? So that's sistem pendidikan. Now is sistem pengangkutan, right? There's the three main, which is kereta api, jalan raya, and perhubungan. For jalan kereta api, they just has a list of all the places. You just have to know that. And the reason why we build kereta api is untuk mencepatkan pengangkutan biji timah dari Lombong ke pelabuhan untuk ekspor. Right? They wanted to speed up the transport of hasil from the mines to the ports. Right? So as you can see, if you actually look here, all of them are between mines and ports. So Taiping and Port Well, Lombong di KL to Port Swettenham, Lombong Seremban to Port Dickson, Lombong Ipoh and Tapah Road to Teluk Angsun. All the Lombong biji timah in Perak, Selangor dan Mislan ada perkhidmatan by 1904. Right, and then there's also between Seberang Perai to all the way to Siam, which is Thailand, in 1918, and they've extended it to Gemas to Pahang, Kelantan, and Siam. And lastly, in 1923, they extended a whole train route from Tanah Melayu all the way to Singapore. Okay, so that's jalan kereta api. And as a Kesan, pembukaan tanah at Pelama untuk getah increased, right? Because they had better connectivity, they opened more land. And example of this is at Johor. A lot of pelabur Eropah came to Johor to membuka tanah only after they built all this jalan kereta api. Next is jalan raya, and most of the jalan raya is diturap, which is tar, or covered in tanah merah. Okay, so the red mud. Okay, this jalan raya is, and it's just a few lists of where it was. For example, Selangor and Perak is the first one in 2,400 kilometers. And then 1902, there's suddenly an influx of many roads because the British mengenalkan kenderaan bermotor di Tanah Melayu. 1911, they built one between Seberang Perai and Melaka, between Perlis and Singapore, and between KL and Kelantan, they had a new jalan raya to connect between Pantai Barat and Pantai Timur. And lastly, for perhubungan, we have the general ways to communicate, which is telegraph, telephone, radio, post, and udara. Right, so all of this is to make economy and also pentadbiran easy for the British. Okay, so we actually learned all this before in Form 1 to Form 3. Lastly, we talk about perkhidmatan kesihatan. So the reason why the British needed perkhidmatan kesihatan in our country was because as the number of buruh increased, the number of population increased, right? Jumlah penduduk meningkat. And because of that, the density of people living increased as well. A lot of people live in this very small area, and it was very tidak diurus. And they didn't have bekalan air bersih yang tidak cukup, okay? Not enough clean water. Therefore, all of these cause a lot of penyakit mudah dijangkit. Okay, so how did they fix this problem? First, they menubuh hospital kerajaan. So the first ones was in Taiping, KL, and then they also had 29 other pusat perubatan around KL and Perak, for example, in these places. Then they also membuka pusat kesihatan kecil, smaller clinics and all that. For example, these numbers in these states, Selangor had 14, Pahang had 2, Negeri Sembilan had 3. And then in 1913, they built a few hospitals in Sabah. And in Sarawak, there were only hospitals in Kuching, nowhere else in Sarawak, until 1921, when they built a small pusat perubatan in Sri Aman and Sibu. Right? Besides the British government, some hospitals are also built by sumbangan orang perseorangan. Okay, so individuals who volunteered money to build hospitals. For example, Hospital Tung Shin in KL, where perkhidmatan kesihatan was only given to pelombong biji timah from China. Okay, in KL. So that's perseorangan. And besides hospitals and all that, we also had research and development centers. For example, in the 1900, they built the Institute Penyelidikan Perubatan in KL, which focuses on researching the causes of diseases and also how to cure them. Lastly, for kebersihan, in 1890, the British put up a sanitary board, okay, which is a lembaga in KL. It's a committee of people who focused on keeping the bandar sanitary, very clean. And Perak also had a few lembaga which does the same function. 1911, they split the sanitary board into two bahagian. The first one will focus on kebersihan, the other one will focus on kesihatan. The one for kebersihan, the job was still for the sanitary board, which continued until World War II. Then the kesihatan job moved to the Jabatan Kesihatan. Okay, so the specific jabatan took care of kesihatan, and sanitary board took care of kebersihan. That's the whole chapter.